Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Tim Russell, Vice President, Community Engagement and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for WTTW and WFMT, and welcome to today's Chicago Tonight Voices, a WTTW News community conversation. WTTW is committed to producing and presenting trusted, best-in-class content fueled by distinctly Chicago sensibility. We have served as Chicago's window to the world, and our purpose is to enrich lives, engage communities, and inspire exploration. Today is a special Voices conversation focused on WTTW News and Chicago Tonight special coverage, A Safer City. As part of our special coverage, we are taking a deep dive into neighborhood crime, violence, and public safety as residents, policymakers, and community groups who work to address the growing issue. For dedicated service coverage, watch Chicago Tonight and find ongoing and extensive data and investigative reporting on WTTW News website. WTTW's special coverage of A Safer City is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for Reducing Violence in Chicago. This generous support of donors, sponsors, and WTTW members and viewers like you make it possible for WTTW to bring provocative ideas to life, to tackle the issues that matter, and to expand our perspective on the world in which we live. There is only one reason, and that reason is you. Thank you for your support. Now, please welcome our host, Joanna Hernandez.
Hi, everyone, and welcome, like Tim said, to WTTW News Community Conversation. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. I'm Joanna Hernandez, the host of WTTW Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. Now, the arts have played a major role in the history of activism and support for members of the LGBTQ plus community in Chicago. Artists have used their work to address issues such as AIDS, violence, and discrimination against their community. Before Pride comes to a close, we want to speak with a few of the artists using their platforms to continue this work today. We're all in listen mode only, but that doesn't mean you can't be part of the conversation. We want to hear from you. So please chime in on the chat function with your questions and comments. I'll try to share them with our guests. Now let's start by introducing our guest, Kenya Elan, a comedian, the host of the podcast Failure, and a live performance producer. Shomari Daniels, aka Show, a funk DJ and booking agent. Karen John Robinson, aka DJ All the Way K, a graphic artist and DJ. And Akaelah Flotho, creator of the Lavendar Project, a Chicago-based archiving project which records and preserves Black queer histories. Now, thank you everyone for joining us and taking the time to being here with us. Now, I want to start. I want to hear from all of you. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey that brought you to the work that you're doing now? Kenya, let's start with you.
I started, it was during pandemic for myself, just kind of like looking for spaces to, well, one, we had nowhere to go. So it was like trying to figure out ways to create community at the time, especially just feeling so isolated. So I started by creating park shows. I created a show called It Will Be Okay, ? Which was basically an opportunity to bring people together somewhat safely, bring together a queer community and just sort of like share where we were at and kind of laugh through it and just like reconnect in a time where it was like really hard to do so.
And Kenya, what was like your coming out journey like?
It's been the last few years, I feel like, that I've really come into my like queer identity. It has, I feel like it's just been a journey of just finding out more of myself and who I am and just feeling more comfortable with who I am. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like now in 2024, I feel like the most myself I've ever felt. And it's a weird and nice feeling. I don't know. I don't know.
No, I feel like coming out is like, it's like a journey, right? So many different steps. It's like not just one destination. It's not just coming out. I feel like there's so many layers. Shows,
yeah,
have you felt the same? Yeah, definitely a process. Have you felt that show, and how have you used your coming out to the work that you do now?
Well, how like you said, you got to come out a few times. My mom even talked to me recently and told me about how like I had a crush on a boy when I was like in second grade. And I was like, oh, I like Kyle. And she was like, oh yeah, that's your friend. And she was like, I was like, no, I like Kyle. So So it was that, but then when I turned 17, that's when I was really going through like, what am I feeling? Because, you know, I grew up in a religious background, and like that was scary to like even make known to people like that I have these thoughts. So yeah, I came out fully when I was 17, and then I came out as non-binary like in 2019. And it's helped me one find more people like me, my community, and it helped me get it. Like music has always been integral as an escape, and like Kenya, I started in 2020 as well. Like I first started making my own beats because I was alone and trying to figure out how to express the the budding emotions during a lockdown, you know. And so I made my own beats and made my own music videos to them. And then I started doing virtual shows. And then once things started opening up again, I started doing happy hours in places. And
That's great.
yeah, now I'm here with y'all.
Now you're here.
Yeah.
I love that. And Karen, what was that like for you? Because I think we talked about layers right now. It's one layer coming out. I feel like we come out in so many different places, but then also wanting to give back or wanting to help or wanting, to bring our community in. What was that journey like for you?
Right, absolutely. I feel like I came out fairly young. I started working like in the club and the DJ industry very young as well. I started DJing when I was about 20. I'm 41 now. And it seemed like, yeah, so like creating opportunities and spaces where I could feel comfortable meant that I was like creating a language and a space and an opportunity for like people to come and find or, like dive into the same interests that I have. And then we can share those and then make more.
What was it like growing up coming out? What would you say in like your area?
Well, I have always been like a fairly introverted person, and I would say I was very what's the word? Adventurous, so it would be like very secure for me to jump on the train and fly all the way through the South Side and go up north and just like wander around and discover things by myself. And that was how I made connections. Like people would see me dressed a certain way. Like I went to raves when I was younger. So coming from the South Side, I dressed a little differently. And there was always a different conversation at every train stop.
You're telling us you have stories here. You're telling us that you have stories.
Like, I would have a different conversation with somebody at every train stop because somebody would be like, "Oh, why are you dressed like that?" and blah, 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 blah. And it would just become more familiar and more comfortable like the further I would go. So by the time I got up north, I'd have 4 or 5 people with me, and we're all going, on Belmont or around the corner to Halsted to see what's popping, what's on sale. So that's kind of how the community started to gather for me.
Because I did watch a documentary that mostly everyone thought that everybody who was gay was living in the North Side.
Yeah, no, the South Side has a humongous gay population.
Okay, I want to go to you. What was that journey like for you?
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, what was that journey like for you in terms of coming out and now the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I came out a little bit later, but I always knew. I would daydream about being Hillary Duff's friend, and I now understand what that meant now. But I think my family is very religious, and so it took me a while. But once I really started being around community, it became really easy. And same with, I came out as bisexual when I was 19, after being very gay in the closet. And then as soon as I moved into a queer house that was gender nonconforming, I immediately was like, learned what non-binary meant. And I was like, oh, that's me. Yeah. And I'm now 29 and it's stuck. It's exactly, I've really come into that. And then for the work I do now, I've always been interested in history. And as soon as I learned about queer history, I realized how powerful it was. And I think for a lot of us, we never learned about a single gay person in history growing up. And I think that's incredibly dangerous and incredibly irresponsible of like our curriculum in general. And when you bring race into it, it's even worse. Like a lot of the curriculum coming out is still very overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly focused on individuals and not communities, not community building, which I think is very intentional. Yeah.
No, and that makes sense. I think now I find myself during Pride Month wanting to look for people who, you know, walked in our shoes, like, you know, decades ago or years ago. And sometimes you have to go digging into it to actually find it. Did you find yourself doing that, Akaelah, as you started your journey with your project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got, like, I guess, formal history training in San Francisco. That's where I got a degree in history with a minor for ethnic studies. And then I moved here for for museum studies master's program. And when we started thinking about capstone projects, I just realized that there was no way I could be invested in it without it being my passion, which is like trying to create narratives around Black queer history that I don't see. And so, like, in here in Chicago, I'm doing a lot of, since I moved here, I'm doing a lot of learning about Chicago history first, then learning about Chicago queer history. But even then, Chicago queer history here, it's really hard to find. Everything's like, there's not like one linear story. Like when I'm in San Francisco, it's really known for having that history, and there's a lot of academics doing that work. Where here I have to like find a book on House, I have to find a book on this. And I'm seeing a lot of people doing a lot more of that work, and it's really exciting. Um, yeah, a lot of really exciting work. But I'm just really excited to see it not just be, I don't explain it, just, I want to see more extensive discussions of it. I want to see like more of it in academia, like more prioritizing that, and same with just historical institutions here, both queer and non-queer. I think that Black queer history shouldn't be an afterthought, and I feel like it's being. It's the purpose of my project is that I don't see enough people doing it. I want to make sure that history isn't lost.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And Kenya, I want to go to you. For a lot of comedians and other artists, identity plays a large role in their style and how they're able to connect with audiences. Does that play a role in your work? Sorry, could you hear me? Kenya might have got a little stuck. Kenya, were you able to hear me? I know she mentioned she had a little technical difficulties. So I'll go to you meanwhile. I think she's having some technical difficulties. Shows, what is that like for you as your identity as an artist?
Can you repeat? I would say my recovery.
There we go. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, you hear me?
Yes, there we go. I couldn't hear you for a little bit. There we go.
Do you hear me now? I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. You don't I ever frozen for a moment.
We're getting there.
Say, is it a little delayed?
I think it's a little delayed. There you go. I think she's getting a little delayed. Hold on. Okay, I'll go to you, Sho. Tell me a little bit about, you know, your journey, your identity, and how does that play such a big role in your style? I've listened to some of your music. You know, how does that, you know, play into your identity?
My bad, I got distracted.
It's okay. Let's take a deep look. We have to laugh it off. What do we say? It's Monday, you know?
Right, it's Monday. It's Monday. Okay, can you ask the question one more time? And no.
Yes. No, it's okay, Sho. No, what I was saying is for a lot of comedians and other artists, identity plays such a large role in their style and how they're able to connect with audiences. Does that play a role in your work?
Definitely, especially like Karen, like what you said. It's when you have that community, like you make that music for your community, things like that. Like, I started a queer dance party back in 2022 called Fortune. That was for Black and brown, queer and trans people to just come and feel free dancing and exploring their, I was gonna say exploring their bodies, but that's not what I meant. But like,
Exploring their movement.
exactly. Where they could just feel free to not be ogled at, you know, like just feel free, you know. And whenever I do perform, I play music that I know my queer self loves to just feel like I could just be, you know? And it's very hard to just be in this world because we're seen for our parts, the way our faces look, the way our hair, like I want to be in a place where I could just dance. So that's what I try to cultivate. So with my identity, I just want to I want to feel safe and feel seen but not perceived. You understand what you feel me? And being able to curate spaces like that where people just are, they just come about, we're like, I just felt like it was a movie.
Hey, I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Especially I feel like sometimes as, you know, being, you know, gay, it's like you almost feel like you have to explain yourself to other people. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that in so many parts of your life where it's like you almost have to explain like why you're gay or like why do you like the same sex. I don't know if you guys have felt that. So for me, I you know, going to queer spaces is just like almost freedom in some sense. So that's really awesome that you're creating that space. Would you say that's, you know, you've have experienced that? That's why creating these, you know, spaces or these events, it's kind of like relieving.
For sure, because even when you're young, like, you know, when you're a kid, people point those things out to you before you even can understand or have the language for it, you know? So people were already calling me slurs, but like calling me gay and a queer before I can even analyze myself for that. You know, I was just being me. And I want to, even if you're not queer, like if you're just a human being that wants to feel like you're ascending, that's all I'm about. Because we're living on a floating rock. That's all I keep telling people. We're on a floating rock. Don't take it too serious. Have fun and just be. Because it's difficult
Just
walking out here, like being judged.
Karen, what are your thoughts, Karen?
Can you repeat the question for me?
You know, what are your thoughts? I'm just very curious because you said you started DJing, you know, at a very early age. What has been the evolution from you started DJing to now in terms of like having safe spaces for queer people? Because I know there was a point where it was still very hard to come out. And even the word, like I remember reading a documentary that people didn't even know what the word lesbian was. It was just gay.
Right. I guess for me, like the introduction to it wasn't necessarily like just trying to seek out queer spaces, but more so just like understanding my feelings and, you know, how the world like impresses certain things on you. Like I was lucky enough to grow up in a family and an environment where we had queer friends of the family. We didn't really have a lot or any honestly like discrimination, you know, like we didn't have like discriminatory conversations about people and their appearances and things like that. So understanding that I could be free being myself and within the music made the journey a little bit easier. And then it was just about trying to, you know, explain who I was like outwardly. It's one thing to like represent yourself on the inside and just kind of stay to yourself and make stuff. And it's another thing to take that or like cover yourself with it and walk outside and then deal with how other people perceive you. Like Sho was saying, you don't always want people to have an opinion on how you look. You just want to be outside and be, you know, and breathe instead of being at home and, you know, like muting it all the time. So yeah, it wasn't so much like a hard process as it was being confident, you know, and knowing that even the choices that I make in music, somebody out there loves it and they believes in it. So they're going to come and dance to it.
I really love that. I think that's also another layer. There's so many layers, but people, you know, kind of trying to pick at why you're wearing that or why you look like that.
Yeah, like who cares?
Like, yes. I mean, for me, I'm femme. My wife is masked. So it's like always those roles, right? Oh, well, she's more masked and you're more femme. It's like doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let us be.
I have femme presenting friends who are way more masked looking than me, you know, on the inside, I guess.
I like to say that's me. but you know, why does it matter? But I think nowadays, I know growing up for me personally, I didn't really find community really easily. I think now the spaces are being created more because of individuals like you guys and Akaelah, like yourself as well, is trying to bring in people in and feel seen. I want to talk more about your work, the Lavendar Project. Can you tell me a story or something that stood out to you the most that you think people should know about someone here in Chicago?
So just to it's a Lavendar Noir project. That's the full name. I think that like I'm still getting really started on this. And one of my favorite people, I interviewed Sho and I interviewed Kay. And I recommended Kay because I thought I really loved like talking to them about growing up here in Chicago and like talking about I don't know, especially talking about Berlin and being like in the interview, she's talking about like seeing Berlin and being like that. I feel like feeling something towards it, and then finally be able to go in. And correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you say you went in before you were 21?
Yeah, I definitely was snuck in a few times, which I think is also a part of like your queer initiation too. I also love that the building was like fairly nondescript.
For people who don't know, for people who don't know what Berlin is, can you explain what that place is?
Berlin was probably, I think, the oldest, if not one of the oldest queer nightclubs on the north side of Chicago. And I think one of the reasons why I liked it so much is its nondescriptness on the outside, like as queers, sometimes we are extremely protective of our spaces. So like you were saying, it was hard to find some things before. Sometimes we're like really particular about that because we don't want everybody to come in, providing a safe space means that you have to keep it safe. So.
And Berlin now it's closed, right? I think they
unfortunately, it closed during the pandemic.
And Akaelah, going back to your work, you did mention why you were so passionate about it. What are your goals for the future with this project?
Yeah, so I guess the first collection is focusing on nightlife, but I want to expand. I chose nightlife because that's like where I started to really find community, and I started to build community, throwing events, and I felt like it was such a magical experience to be able to be like, if I put the call out for Black queer community, they're going to come through, if that makes sense. And yeah, moving here, I just felt like I really wanted to focus on that because I do feel like it's like a place of resilience for a lot of us. For the future, it started out as a capstone project for my master's degree. I have since graduated, and now I'm just trying to build it out, just checking back in with people who want to be involved, because I am one person and I have too many hobbies. And so I'm trying to find a way to make it sustainable. So right now, I met with one other person. We're going to try to do one interview a month. Just to keep it really intentional. I really want to make it so people can submit things eventually, and to have some sort of visual materials and ephemera. I think that would be really amazing. And I also think that like ephemera is something that's also being lost, like flyers, just photos of joy. I think that is something I would love for the website to be. I would like to give a farther reach. So hopefully get these interviews on Spotify and edited. But yeah, I just want to build something sustainable that if I decide to step away from it, it can continue, because I do think it's really important to have some sort of place for people to connect with if they want to either.
You don't know who it might help. You don't know who it might help. Honestly,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know what young people are like. I needed to read that story. Kenya, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right, there we go. She's back. They're back.
Yeah.
We had to laugh about it. Technical difficulties.
Here I am.
Here I am. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this question that I had for you. That Sho couldn't stop laughing. I was asking you, Kenya.
Comedy of errors. Yeah.
It happens. Hey, now we know what your next comedy skit might be about. I was asking you, for a lot of comedians and other artists, identity plays a large role in their style and how they're able to connect with the audience. Does that play a role in your work?
Yeah, I would say yeah, entirely. I mean, it's all about, I feel like, you know, a lot of my comedy comes from like just personal experiences, personal, you know, interaction stories, all of that. And it's all about relatability. People won't laugh if they don't understand where you're coming from. And I feel like I found the majority of my community is where I've thrived, and where people I find the most understanding is people who are like me. So yes, it very much is connected. It's very much tied to like the audiences. I mean, yeah, entirely.
I don't want to put you in the spot. Can
Like
you
30
like,
seconds. It's like took me half an hour to get on back on here, and now it's 30 seconds. Am I out
no,
again?
I don't want to put you in the spot though, but
Oh.
I said I don't want to put you in the spot, but can you like spit out a joke? Can you tell us one of your
I feel like my just everything that's happened in the last 20 minutes has been a joke. I swear to God. I'm just like in and out. Oh my goodness.
You're doing your best.
If for everyone who's watching, everyone here saw my bedroom. So there's that. Everyone saw my full. I spent a half an hour trying to set up this freaking camera to then get on, and also just like, oh, there's my bed. So yeah, it's been a very personal experience to say.
Yeah, you definitely just came out again.
And I don't even know
just
if
came out again.
I don't know if you can. God darn it! Come on.
Okay. No, but the best is your roommate show just can't
come to a show. It'll be just like this.
With me laughing the hardest in the background.
So I do want to talk about.
I can hear them from their room.
So I want to go to you and talking a little bit about community. You know, really where do you find yourself going? And I know this is such a broad question, but you've created events. You didn't have to create events. You created these spaces. You've mentioned that you created them really because you didn't find a space. Do you find, you know, younger versions of yourself coming up to you and telling you like thank you, or people coming up to you and asking and thanking you for creating these spaces? Like, what has that been like?
It's funny you asked me that because yeah, people have come up and like it's very surreal because like I think I'm just giving pieces of myself out there, and for people to come up and be like, you've really inspired me to create spaces. Like there's a DJ Moby Thick. She came up to me at my job because like I work at Cafe Mustache, and she was she had a DJ birthday party there. And she came up to me and started crying. I was like, whoa, what's wrong? And she was like, you were one of the inspirations for me to start DJing. And I was like, oh wow, that's beautiful. And when people would come up to me about Fortune, or like the way I curate events at Cafe Mustache, it's rewarding because I don't, you know how it's hard to step back and take in those moments of accomplishment.
I don't know why it's so hard. And it's like I don't know if it's impossible to take a step back and kind of almost tell yourself like, hey, like you're proud of yourself, right? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, especially because like you just keep going. Like I just like to keep going, and then when somebody else comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, I see what you're doing, and I appreciate that." It's that's the reward. Like no, like money. I mean, there's no money in this business, so there's no money. But it's like building that community of people being like, "Hey, I see what you're doing. You've inspired me to do this. Can I do this with you?" And then the delayed laughter. But no, just being able to even like make friends throughout all of this, that's what's really rewarding to me. And building that community that sees what you're doing is just, I never get enough of it. It's intimidating at first because you're like, okay, oh, you want to be my friend, or you do want to like, are you trying to take something from me? Because like when you start creating things, people can start being like energy vampires and stuff like that. And it's hard to differentiate that, especially once your name is out there more. So No, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I like community.
And piggyback out of Kay, how you as yourself as well, through your journey, how did you know when someone had good intentions or not, in terms of also wanting to continue to create spaces for our community?
I guess you can tell by their work, because it's one thing to sit with you and try to steal your ideas. It's another thing to authentically represent exactly what you're trying to do, which is usually like you can't, you only, so they have to do the work. They have to also be able to represent themselves and their history, because that's what made me who I am, and that's what makes my events and my sets authentic, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. But like it's me, right? Like what you hear is what I've put the work in. It's what I've been influenced by, and that's what makes it so honest.
And Kay, I'm honestly, just because I'm curious, can you share a story? Is there a story that still is in your mind, back in the day, that you still think about? I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Not just because I've been out here a long time, but also I'm old and I'd be forgetting stuff. But yeah, man, there's so many. If I can think of one, I'll definitely try and shout it out for sure.
And what is it? First of all, you're not old. You're experienced.
No, I'm not old. I'm old because I stand up all night every night. But honestly, just as a whole, Berlin was one of those places that you could easily get lost in, not just in the music, but with the opportunity of being around a bunch of weirdos, and maybe I blocked some of that stuff out because I was getting a little weird myself, but it was in the idea of freedom. There were very few places at some points, even now, where you could just live free, and have fun and not feel judged, and maybe walk out and the sun is coming up.
Do you guys feel that we're in a better place now than we were before, in terms of being who you are? Okay, when you do feel you've talked about coming from a very religious background, and that itself is a whole other topic, but do you feel now you can go out and be yourself and be who you are and not feel judged or discriminated?
No. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that I'm internally in a way better place, but there's still being bisexual and biphobia, all these, it's really bad. Biphobia is really bad. There's still transphobia, colorism, ableism. And I think that those are going to be really difficult conversations and to continue to have. I also think that we had a really interesting moment in 2020 where a bunch of white people and non-Black people were introduced to Black theory, Black critical race studies, and now they've tried to colonize it and they try to tell me about it. And I think that there's just a really weird environment now. But I do think things are better. Sorry, that was so pessimistic, but
it's your truth. I think we all have our passions and our experiences and why we, there's also the topic of pride, the Pride Parade, right?
Yeah.
Our thoughts on Pride Month, and how all of a sudden everywhere you go, every business has a gay flag. So it's are you really celebrating? Do you really know what we're celebrating, or do you really know our stories? Have you guys felt that?
Yeah, the homes that say not all lives matter, but it's Black Lives Matter here. Any gender can use a toilet, whatever. It's a lot of performative energy these days, because there's a difference between having a sign in your window and then having a conversation with somebody.
Or holding a sign in the street.
Exactly. Exactly. For a photo op too. A lot of people just want a photo op. They want to be seen. The black squares during 2020. Mess. No, everybody, to piggyback off of you, Akaelah, I don't feel like we're in a better place. I feel like we're in a different place. We've for sure got more vocabulary for things. There's more, the internet is on our phone. There's no excuse for us to be as ignorant as a society as we really are. There's so many people who already hate us because of the way we express ourselves, the way we look, but the way we, if I'm holding hands with somebody who is of the same gender as me, or whatever, people already are scared of each other. Our country has made us afraid of each other. It's like even with even within the queer community itself, there is a lot of judgment. You've got to look a certain way to be queer in this city. And a lot of people gatekeep what it means to be queer. It's like you can't see under this skin. You don't, and especially with just gets very heated. I am activated.
Activated, show is activated.
But with social media, like these parasocial relationships with people that claim to be queer just because of the way they dress. Clothes does not make your gender or your sexual orientation. I feel like more people need to have conversations like this and speak to each other face to face sometimes, especially when they don't understand somebody else. Because that's
the only way we get to know each other.
Yeah.
That's very true. Kenya, is there something that you want to say? I feel like she wanted to jump in.
Oh, I hear Kenya's audio out there. It's gonna take a minute. It's delayed.
Let's see if it's. Want to give her the opportunity.
We're almost there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm just gonna say this, and I think you guys will hear me. I don't know. No, yeah, I think there's something to be said for it's common. There's something to be said for, yeah, living things and not just creating words. And you know, what's the saying? Like, there's words and there's actions, and there's words and there's actions. And I think we've seen a lot of people, like we said, black squares and put up signs and do the easy things, but like their actions and having real conversations and really putting yourself in other people's shoes and not putting yourself in other people's shoes, but also taking a step back and looking at yourself and looking at how you moved in the world and how you treated other people and what other biases you might have. That's a process we all have to go through on a daily basis. And this, it's something we have to figure out. And I'm on a 30-second delay, so I don't even want to wrap this up. And I'll expect to hear back from you guys at 1:15.
We have to laugh it for a Monday, you guys. This is great. Kay, I want to go to you. You know, for the younger generation, how would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself?
Yes. Who would you say? Who are you now?
I am like, I don't know. I'm a combination of all of my ancestors and experiences. You know, I am. Everybody that around me that I grew up around had an influence on me one way or another, especially musically and artistically. So through their discoveries, I found other things that I could represent and also like share with them, you know, back and forth. Even just being around friends and family, there's always a conversation about what we're learning, what we're experiencing. So I try to be a representative of all of those things at the same time. So not only am I queer, I'm also an artist and a musician and a weirdo and like so many other things. And I think that it is really cool that I can take one hat and make it the main hat when I go into this environment. And then I can turn around in that situation and have a conversation with somebody and switch a hat immediately, you know?
What would you like to tell someone who's the hat? That's a good, yeah, fire hat. What's something you would love to tell somebody who's, struggling to come out, having a hard time finding community, at this point in their life? What would you advise them?
Be true to yourself first and take care of yourself first. Because although like we are having a conversation about community, there have been times where community has not always been the answer for the problem for me, Sometimes it's about looking internally and just kind of figuring out what is the best solution for how I can thrive in that situation, and then reaching out and finding people who can support that after the fact. Because sometimes being outside can be confusing, Sometimes being outside can be like brutally honest, and it doesn't necessarily help the situation. So like, yeah, making sure that I approach things with like a clear head and a clear heart, then I can go outside and fight or whatever I need to, in order to find what I need. But yeah, me first and then everything else.
That's great advice. Sho, what about you?
Can you restate the question from me?
What is something that you would like to tell someone who's younger, or someone who's in a phase where they're struggling to come out? They want to come out, but they're struggling to come out. Well, what advice would you give them?
Honestly, be patient and gentle with yourself. Yeah, be patient, gentle with yourself. I agree with you, Kay. Like, it's a lot of like the inner work that you got to do before you go outside, because you could run into the wrong group that don't have like the best interests for you, and they could kind of warp how you feel about yourself or what you think about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, just being very gentle and kind to yourself, because I know we all know how that feels to just not know. Like, we didn't even know these words, some of these words back when we were kids, And yeah, that's my advice, honestly. And just be, once you figure out your truth, or like what you think like your true being is, go out and kind of explore that. And like, that doesn't even just mean with people, that means with like the things that you consume, like the media you consume. Just do, especially because like I said, the internet's at our fingertips now. Just I remember like, you remember those Googling, am I gay?
I remember Googling, why do I like girls? It's just,
yeah.
And I saw, you can see that other people would Google the same thing. So
It's the number one search on Google kind of stuff. But yeah, that'd be my advice.
Akaelah, same question for you. What would be that advice for someone else who is, in a stage where they're struggling to come out?
Yeah. I guess kind of echoing what we've been saying is that there's no, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to turn my sound off for messages. There's no perfect way to be queer. There's no perfect way to be like Black. And I think that you will find people like you. I found a lot of other like nerdy Black queer folks. And once I did that, I started to really understand that it didn't have to look a certain way. And I think that I became more confident as a result. And yeah, I guess that advice, and also just like allow space for change with gender and sexuality, and allow space for growth, because we all have different privileges, and that we need to like all address if we want to really care for each other as community.
Very well said. To wrap it up, we're at the end of the conversation. Is there an event or something that people should know about? We are reaching the end. I think the Pride Parade is this Sunday, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't do the parade anymore, but I am outside working all weekend for sure.
Oh, nice. Is there one that in particular that people should know about?
I don't know. I would say if you want to find out what I'm doing, the easiest way is probably to follow me on Instagram, DJ All the Way K. And then you can plug yourself into whatever feels good for you.
I like that. Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. It was such a lovely conversation, despite the technical difficulties. show you can go make fun of Kenya like when you're done with this conversation.
I shall.
You shall. Well, thank you guys so much. We're out of time. Thank you to our panelists, Kenya Elan, Shomari Daniels, Karen Robinson, and Akaelah Flotho. And thank you to our viewers for joining us today at WTTW News Community Conversation. Now, again, feel free to submit any story ideas, topics, and issues at WTTW News needs to be covering at the email listed in the chat box. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please join us for Chicago Tonight Black Voices, which airs on Wednesdays at 5:30, and Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, which I host on Thursdays at 5:30. Now take care and have a great rest of your day. Happy Monday, guys.
Great talking to you guys.
Happy Pride.
All right.
Happy Pride. There you go.